It's interesting. I'm really excited to hear about your baseball career. I own two baseball facilities myself, and I love the game. It's done so much for me. What
Yeah,
position?
pitcher.
How hard did you throw?
97 was the fastest I clocked.
Woo! Could you do that now?
Well, probably not. I tore my UCL on
Oh,
my
you
elbow.
did.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
that was
TJ. You didn't.
no. That there's a story that goes into that, but yeah, I basically tore my UCL in my senior year, about a third of the way through the season, and all the scouts were in the stands and they saw it happen, and then the phone stopped ringing. So some family stuff happened. Had to go back home. Dad ended up in the hospital. Parents lost the house, and so I just had to kind of stay home and hold the fort
Yeah,
down for him, and didn't really pursue baseball after that. Kind of jumped right into the career.
yeah, yeah. Were
Yeah,
you? So was it right after? So I did baseball for 2 years. Got accepted to UCSD. I was an outfielder. I was a role player. Just contributed. Was went in and did base running. Got spot at bats. But I realized I didn't like all of the conditioning. I
yeah,
conditioned more in college than I ever did in my life for baseball, more than football, more than anything. That sounds
yeah,
really weak minded, but I got a job at a gym that I liked a lot more. And, my family didn't have a lot of money and $50,000 a year just wasn't cutting it. How did you get into the industry? I know that I was looking at kind of background and all that. You've done quite a bit, like lots of sales, fitness equipment. I like the Meathhead Movers. I think that's awesome. But
that's a fun story within itself. I would
yeah,
say that actually that taught me a lot of the skills that carried me into the career that I'm in now.
yeah,
Funny enough to say that, but that company was really interesting because the guys that started it, it was two brothers that started it in high school, and they just got together, their meathead friends, and moved furniture, put ads in newspapers, and worked for pizza, and did the whole thing right, and then scaled it
yeah,
up to be this like really big successful business. But the structure of it was really what kind of caught me off, or caught me at the beginning, because that they basically said, hey, look, we want to hire on student athletes, people that are obviously in great shape, that are either in college or pursuing a degree, or also pursuing maybe a professional career in a sport. And so they always kept like this kind of culture of having student athletes all together. And so every time you went to work, didn't feel like you were just kind of meeting random people. It felt like you were meeting, brothers and sisters that you kind of grew up with throughout college and high school. So it was a really cool dynamic, and they also just had like a structure within inside of that business where, hey, you work up to be a meathead, and then you get to be a super meathead, and then you get to be a mentor. And like the being in the mentor position always felt so cool because you felt like, oh, okay, now I'm like an experienced person and I'm teaching the people below me. So the structure taught you a lot that like carried me throughout a lot of my career. And I always like take it back to that and like thank those people a lot for what they taught me, and within a simple moving business. But as simple as it was, I think the structure was important.
yeah. And sometimes, right, it's the simplicity that we really find the most valuable lesson. It's sometimes in the nuance, in the white space of
Yeah.
of things, And I'm curious, after your career, and I'm just trying to understand the timing. You did that for a while. I mean, 5 years. You were doing that, and so that was during your baseball career, and then after.
Yeah, so that was my freshman year of college. So I went to three different schools. I went to a junior college for 2 years. I went to Lee University for my junior year, and then I went to Azusa Pacific for my senior. So the first 2 years, while I was in junior college, I was working, part time with the moving company. But I started at that freshman year. And then as I got into my sophomore year, that's actually when I started to get looks from professional scouts. And so I actually got drafted my sophomore year by the Oakland A's. And I got someone to represent me at that time that basically said, hey, look, you got all these scholarships waiting on you. And the money that you're going to be offered because you're going to get taken in a lower round is probably not worth it. If I were you, I would, go take a scholarship, go get the education, get a little better, and then see where you're at your junior year. And so I took that advice, ended up taking the opportunity to go to Lee University. But right before that, I actually went and played for a summer ball team out in Maryland called the Bethesda Big Train. and one of the Pirates scouts that was looking at me, he actually was the pitching coach for that team. So he took me out there to that during that summer, right after my sophomore year. And so when I went out there, that was actually one of the best learning experiences because I got a bunch of other players that were also, being looked at by professional scouts, potentially going to play at the next level. And so that was a cool experience. And then got to go to Lee University, play at a private school, really in a completely different culture than I was used to. I was born and raised in Southern California. And as being kind of like a surfer skater boy growing up, going into a completely different area of the country, it didn't rub with me right. And I think I didn't rub with other people maybe the same way. They didn't like my relaxed way of life or personality. Even though I was very serious about what I did, they just kind of didn't take it that way. I think just because they were more rigid than I was. So I didn't really mesh well, I think, with that dynamic. But the baseball team themselves were super competitive and super talented, and we ended up going to the World Series for the NAIA that year and lost in the final game. So I always joke about it. I got this ring that says, I'm a runner up, and I couldn't tell you where it is because it's probably the biggest disappointment. But to say I had the experience was pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and what I find super interesting, I played community college baseball, and in our league, the Northwest Association of Community College, NWAC for short, we won the championship in '98, and I got a ring, or I got an order form for a ring, and I never filled it out.
Yeah,
So that kind of stinks.
yeah,
But our team was actually inducted into NWAC is between Washington, Oregon, Idaho. I don't know if it goes into Montana, but our team got inducted into the Hall of Fame 2016, and that's the only thing I can hang my hat on. I was a bench guy,
yeah,
I didn't do a lot, but I always find it interesting, especially talking to athletes. And there's a lot of things to unpack there because the mindset of an athlete, the competitiveness, and how you apply it into an entrepreneurship and a business setting. I'm curious from your baseball side because I can distinctly remember when I chose to stop. Yours was a catastrophic injury. I'm curious for you. When did the itch stop about getting back out there, and then you transition really into full time? Was it something that was relatively easy, or because of the injury? When did you kind of accept it? I'm done.
Uh, if I'm honest, it took me a long time.
Yeah.
I've been playing baseball since I was 2 years old. So to just drop something like that, or to stop thinking about it, or stop wanting to pursue it is very difficult. You go up and from 2 years old till you're 21 years old. That's pretty much your entire life. So
Yep.
to have to change your mindset and just learn to adapt a lot of the things that you learned maybe through all those experiences was a task in itself, right? Within itself. So for me, I mean, I remember when I hurt my arm and just, feeling sorry for myself for a few months and trying to figure out how to stay positive and how to work through that. And then once I did say, you know what, this isn't the end for me, there's always going to be another opportunity, whether it be in baseball or something else. I don't know what it is, but I can't sit here and feel sorry for myself and expect those things to happen. So I have to work towards it, and I started looking more inward, and I think that helped me tremendously to just get out of my own head because I was letting kind of the weight of the experience and the bad things that had happened, hold me down. But the moment I saw like kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, I was able to kind of bring myself out of that, and that taught me a lot within itself. Just to be able to go through the experience and come out of something where I said, I thought I was going to play professional baseball. I thought that was my life. Well, that's not your life. Let's figure out another path. And so once I went home and realized my father was in the hospital, potentially going to pass away, other things became important. It wasn't baseball anymore. It wasn't just thinking about myself. It was having these other life experiences that were starting to take over and kind of put things in perspective. So I think everything kind of happened maybe in the right way, wrong way, whatever you say, but the way it happened, it allowed me to grow from it, and it allowed me to kind of put myself in a position that I said, hey, you got to change your mindset, and you got to either push past this and go in the positive direction, or you can go in the negative direction. And uh, I didn't grow up in a wealthy neighborhood. My family, same thing. Maybe made $60,000 together, and so it was always, I saw the people around me that made the wrong decisions. So I felt in my head that I didn't have to go through those or take that same path because I could learn from their mistakes. So the biggest thing I think is just learning from other people's mistakes, right? We've heard it before, but when you actually see it and you realize like I don't have to go down that path, I can take another one and maybe get a couple steps ahead. That helped tremendously for me in all aspects of my life. So as I kind of went through these experiences and transitioned from, hey, I'm not going to be a baseball player anymore. What else am I going to do? I was like, well, what am I good at? And as I started trying out all these sampling these different career paths, and I went and did car sales, I went and sold solar, I
Yeah.
started selling fitness equipment. And I don't think it was until I got into selling fitness equipment did I realize like, okay, this is something that I could do for the rest of my life. I was like, everything I've done up until this point has kind of drawn me or prepared me for this. And I'm actually good at this, and it's something that I can do in kind of a more relaxed setting. I always used to think that, hey, maybe I want to wear a suit and tie to work every day. Well, the moment I had to go and sell cars and iron my shirts and put a tie on every day and try and chase people down so they wouldn't leave the dealership, I was like, this isn't for me. So
Yeah.
finding the fitness industry was kind of a savior within itself.
Yeah. It's tough to go from a pullover warm up to a coat and a tie.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I can relate. I mean, look at
yeah.
me.
Exactly. No, I love it, man. That's the best part about this industry, and it being that relaxed. People not caring about what you're wearing, but more about what you represent, and the camaraderie within it. All of that drew me to it, and here I am. I would say I'm going to be a lifer.
Yeah. And what I always enjoy talking to athletes, and just because it was my life as well. I didn't start at 2, I started at 8, and I knew it was time to hang it up. And it's like, you got my 2 year. It's like, hey, you can walk on at this university. I got a call from my coach. Like, you can walk on. And like, hey, might be a good opportunity. But I love the job that I had at the gym. So I'm making 850 an hour, picking up hypodermic needles and cleaning machines and toilets at Gold's Gym in Aurora. This is 1997. And when it was time to hang it up, I was so fortunate enough to find the connection with people through the fitness industry. And I found that, not dealing, but communicating with different types of teammates, the different teams, the summer ball teams, and the different type of competitive situations that we were in, because it's up and down, right? And we hear the cliche for those that are watching or listening, baseball, majority of the time you're going to fail. That's just the reality, at least for us hitters. I don't know about you pitchers.
Yeah.
But
Hey, very
there's
similar.
a ton of failure in baseball. And I'm curious because it's second nature for us that have played the game. But for those that haven't, when you take that approach, that awareness, understanding the rules of the game with the nuances and the game within the game, what things have you taken into now your this career, this love that you have within the fitness industry, and trying to grow a company and trying to lead it on a national level? What have you taken from those things of competitive baseball that have helped you be the person that you are, lead the way that you lead, and compete to create a great company?
I think there's like two aspects of it for me if it's coming from the baseball realm. One, I was a pitcher, so in some ways it felt very much like an individual sport at times because being on the hill it just felt like you had command. If someone got a hit, someone hit a home run, or something happened on the field, it felt like it was your fault because at the beginning the game doesn't start until you throw the ball. So, but then the other side of it is it's a complete team sport. Like it's selfish to think that every decision you make is going to dictate how the game turns out or how the season turns out. So it's completely a team sport as well. But I like the dynamic of both of those things, and I think those helped me tremendously with now my professional career. I mean, when I started out as a rep, I always kind of tipped my hat to being the youngest rep in the industry, at least until someone else claims that over me. But I was 27 years old, starting out at being a territory rep for the eastern half of the U.S. And it was a big role for myself, but also just coming in as a young person to talk to business owners that were much older than me, much more experienced than me. Why would they care to listen to what I have to say with someone with very little experience? So it was being able to overcome a lot of those things and just find commonalities. And I realized in the baseball world, as a team, you become close because you find commonalities or you go through the same triumphs together and going through those experiences together create bonds. And I know that's with this network within the fitness industry. It's kind of the same thing. You start to go through these same similar situations as other people, and then they show more respect towards you, or they feel like they can connect with you because you've gone through those similar things. So I think when I started to find out what I connected with most of these customers, clients, and business owners, mainly it was like my baseball experience or, my sports experience growing up or some of the trials and tribulations we went through with family. All these things that we find that we can connect on those levels, then the rest kind of comes with it. Because I think it's mainly getting through that door, and that's part of sales, right? Like, how do you knock down the barrier? How do you get that connection with that customer? How do you make them trust you? And the biggest way is just like being real with them, being honest with them. I never came in like the we talk about anybody that's been in car sales would probably say the same thing, and they hate that type of sales. Like it's very cutthroat. It's very it's a complete different experience because everyone
Yeah.
looks at it as a very negative experience. So for me, I never liked that, and I don't think most people do. But going into the fitness industry and doing what I did, I didn't have to be aggressive. I could go in and just be honest with people, like, hey, if I don't have inventory, I don't have inventory. It's coming in a couple months. Here's the facts. These are the things I'm working with. What can I do to make the experience better for you? It was never like, hey, we do have inventory. Let me collect that order and then make them wait like 5 or 6 months. Like it was never like that with me. I always wanted to just be an open book and make sure that they know I was being as transparent as possible. And I think that came through in a lot of relationships and has led me to where I am now. So I would say from baseball, it was mainly just learning how to go through adversity, but also the teamwork and creating that bond between the team players and realizing that I could do that within the network I was building.
Yeah, because it's really interesting. The game that we love. It's that tension between the individual aspect of it and the dependency on the team. Right? There's that
Yeah.
constant tension because you need to perform individually, but you
Yep.
can only win as a team. I always found that fascinating. Especially with other team sports. And you brought something up that was super interesting to me because I was in the same boat. I was 20. I had started in the industry 18. I was 21, excuse me, and I worked my way up, and maybe it's just because of the lack of people that they had, but I was able to lock on with a consulting group and start going around the country and work with gym owners, and eventually I got to run my own project. And as you know, these projects aren't cheap, especially with franchise gyms with like a Gold's or a World's or those types of brands. And I was with Gold's gym and loved the brand, still do actually. And I found myself as a 21-year-old talking to people who had 2 to 3 to 4 times more experience than I. Well, I had 3 years of experience at that time. And for me, how I combated that fear of my age was really through communication, was studying different techniques, understanding the industry. And I'm curious, when you got in, you mentioned that you're the one of the youngest territory sales at that time. What was it that gave you comfort to reduce your anxiety to focus on that age difference? What things did you do? Because I think from a value standpoint, there's people watching this and listening that I'd love to give value to that maybe are young in the industry and they have these aspirations. And maybe for whatever reason, they find themselves in a leadership position or a position of influence. And I've talked to enough people that there's always been a common thread. Even the veterans that I talk to now, it's like, man, at the time I didn't think I belonged there.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what would you say to those individuals to combat that anxiety of hey, they're young in the industry and to gain confidence?
Be a great listener. I mean, that carried me through so many situations and allowed me to grow in so many different parts of the industry or within my career. Just being a good listener. I mean, when I first came into the industry in trying to grasp, what my role was and how I could best help or assist my customers, I didn't know everything. I didn't have the experience. So the only way I could get that was by listening to those that had the experience before me. And so I think it always came back to like my grandfather was a veteran and being around a lot of vets and like having that respect aspect and just knowing to respect your elders and to listen to those stories. And I always took that with me everywhere I went. So when I would walk into a room and someone older than me, maybe more experienced, I would listen, and I'd show them respect and gratitude. And I would hope that that would come through in our conversations. So that helped tremendously. And I would say, if before anything else, if you don't know the answer, then just listen and tell them that you're going to find the answer for them. And you don't have to have all the answers, especially when you're young. That most people will cut you a little slack. They're like, "Oh, we get it. You don't have the experience, but are you willing to work hard for us? When we want something, when we need something, are you going to be there for us? Are you going to come through? Are you going to be consistent? So those are the things that helped me grow, and I would think helped me build my network within the industry. So being a young person coming in, just listen, be a good listener, be consistent, and try and deliver on everything that you promise you can.
Yeah, because I think there's, a lot of people lean on the whole fake it till you make it thing. And I
Yeah,
don't just don't think that's the right way, because if you don't know it, it's okay to share that,
yeah.
because you can surround yourself or seek individuals that'll uplift you, give you support. And, and that's where I found, and my success was reaching out to mentors. For you during that time, and I'm sure even now, listening and learning from people, older people, younger people. I'm sure you've run into a couple mentors or things that have really guided you. Uh, who are those people, or what positions do they hold, and what things have really helped mold who you are today, in terms of your post baseball career. Now you're in the fitness industry and trying to lead a company.
So I think, I mean, the biggest mentors for any athlete, right, growing up is their coaches. And so for me, I always tied back to that, like high school football. A football coach at that time instilled things in me that I don't think I would have learned anywhere else. And then in my baseball career, in my junior college, I had a pitching coach that he was more like a rah rah guy. He was always in my corner. He was always supporting me. And I'm not saying that he didn't educate me or give me good life skills, throughout it, but it just seemed like him being there to support me and always say, "Hey, you got this," is what pushed me through a lot of things. So being in a lot of those situations, I think back to those things, and I think about how supportive someone could be, even though they may not know you that well or take that coaching role or mentoring role, and just relating back to those things because I wouldn't say I necessarily had a bunch of mentors that I could call on and say, "Hey, I'm in this situation. What should I do?" I never really had, I think, a person like that, but I had a lot of mentors growing up. So I would always resort to those memories and think about the things that I learned through those experiences and then carry that through whatever it was that I was trying to work through. So I know, mentoring is supposed to be a big thing, but I always found it difficult to find a mentor growing up, in the professional career, I should say.
Yeah.
Outside of my baseball, I always had them, but I didn't know how to call back on them. And I think maybe a lot of times it was pride. I didn't want to show that I needed help in a lot of situations. And now I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, hey, I don't understand this. What can your experience tell me? So I probably have more mentors or colleagues that I can reach out to now than I did before. But maybe that's just being young and getting into an industry and not learning how to let go of your pride at the beginning. But then once you become humbled, I think that helps you progress a lot further,
And
a lot
and how
quicker.
did you overcome that? Because I believe that's a pretty big unlock,
Yeah.
especially for really ambitious individuals, where I found the similar thing. I wanted to do it. I wanted to be the one that was responsible for the success, and equally, I was willing to accept the failure. But I wanted to do it, and I realized it's not an I thing. It's very cliche, right? But you overcoming that pride thing, what led to that? Because I think that's incredibly valuable, that if somebody watching, young or veteran, in the industry, any industry, doesn't matter what industry, how did you overcome it, and what led to that?
I think it came back to honestly self-reflection again and kind of looking back at my previous examples with family or friends or people that I grew up with. And then I saw what, being hard-headed got you. I mean, a lot of times it didn't get you anywhere. And a lot of times it keeps you in place and it doesn't allow you to grow. So again, I kind of reflect on a lot of those situations and personal experiences. And I just got to a point in my life where I realized, this isn't helping me grow. So what do I need to do, change about myself or change about my outlook on life? How do I continue to grow? Because I've gotten the opportunity to leave my hometown and play baseball and travel and get around and have all these experiences. But if I don't learn to grow even further than that, then am I really doing any of that justice? So for me, it's like I just wanted to continue to grow and to continue to experience more things in life. And the door that opened for me with baseball, I mean, that was it. That was the key for my success, I feel like, because it allowed me or showed me that there was other opportunities. I don't think if I
Yeah.
ever really had that opportunity, or if I was in my hometown still, I would be kind of short-sighted because I wouldn't understand that there was other things out there or what that experience felt like. So a lot of that helped push me forward and honestly carried me through where I am right now.
Yeah, and I'm curious in terms of where you're at right now. What are you doing, just to so everybody knows what your approach is in what you're doing? So if you can share, well, what are you doing now?
Yeah. So now I'm the national sales director for Force USA. Previous to this role, I worked with Inspire Fitness, and I was the Eastern rep for them. So I handled 24 states on the eastern half of the U.S. And that was a great experience. But now moving into this next role, I kind of got to take the next step up. So now I'm the national sales director. I get to handle the entire U.S. and Canada. And it's kind of a similar role in the sense of where I'm working with a company that manufactures and sells fitness equipment, and primarily strength residential equipment. So that's what my previous company did, but then they grew to be a really big thing and ended up selling to investors. And so that was a great experience to be a part of that. But now I kind of get to get back to a company that's kind of starting at ground zero. I shouldn't say ground zero, but at kind of the early stages of their career, getting into the specialty retail space. So this company I'm now getting with, they've had a lot of success over the last 5 to 6 years online, and they've sold a lot of product and they've made a brand. And if you look online, you see Force USA everywhere now, but they don't have a physical presence, and so that's why they hired me and brought me in. So now I get to use my experience and my network to build out the specialty retail network for Force USA, and so that's currently what I'm doing. And as we grow here, I'm going to build on a staff underneath me, and we're going to be able to see how big we can get this thing. But it's been a good experience so far, and honestly, having the network to call on and those people I had relationships with has helped carry this brand into a new realm of what it's going to be.
And you said something key, and I'd love to unpack that. Is the value of those relationships, and spending the time, because you alluded to that, listening, right? And I'm sure that's been the foundation of how you built a lot of relationships. Now, the utilization of those relationships in the most respectful way can only come if you've built equity. And for those that are watching and listening, how do you go about building relationships without trying to posture for something in return? What is it about the priority of like authentic connection that I'm sure is paying dividends now in this new role? How do you look at meeting new people, uh, engaging with new people to really create an authentic connection?
Well, I mean, part of it is getting past the fear, right? I mean, to be in this business or to be on the sales side or to be in any sort of seniority position, you have to let go of the fear a lot of times, and to understand that, like, to approach somebody or to get an account or to build a relationship with someone, you have to push past the fear of whether it's failing or them rejecting you. Rejection is always a key thing in sales, right? But you have to have no fear in that sense. And so for me, it's being somewhat that sales guy that will email you and call you, and if you don't want to talk to me, I may still try and contact you, but it's never in an aggressive way. It's just like, hey,
Yeah.
I just want to talk. Like, here's what I'm doing. If it doesn't fit what you're looking for right now, that's fine. But I'll come back to you down the road. So I never really forget about them. But I'm not the guy that continues to push on them every day, every week. But I'll come back to them a few months down the road or a year down the road. But I just remember those ties that I tried to make earlier on, and sometimes they become something, and sometimes they don't. But you won't know unless you're trying. You're constantly building that pipeline. So a lot of these, I would say a lot of these relationships I've created have come from that, just me being persistent, but not in an aggressive way. It's been persistence, but like, hey, I want to help you out. I want to do something for you, or I really would like to work together you in this form or another. And so I think not being aggressive, or at least knowing kind of what your key thing is. Like, my personality has never been aggressive. It just isn't. I couldn't do it if I wanted to. So I just go with what my strengths are. And so I think that translates a lot when people see that your personality is being true and honest to what you're saying and doing. But these relationships were built on that. So a lot of it was persistence, but at the same time, it wasn't being a pushy salesperson. It was trying to figure out what their needs were and then figuring out how I can accompany those needs. So, like, a good
And
example is, I made some good relationships in other areas to the point where they're like, hey, you want to come out and go skiing one weekend? Do you want to come out and go hang out? That was aside from the business. And I think that's when you're creating real relationships, is when you can pick up the phone, talk about an order, and then go into a conversation of like, oh yeah, I shot an 88 this weekend in golf. Like, so I think those are important. You should be able to combine some of what your real life is and what your career is. And if you can mix those two together, I think those are good relationships worth having.
Yeah, and you spoke on a couple things. Overcoming fear was one, and I'd like to stay there real quick. And if you can expand on that, what specific fears do you feel like people need to overcome to create those relationships, and how did you do it, or what suggestions you have when you work with your team to overcome those fears of rejection, so you can ask those questions, so you can be confident that you are following up with like real intent, pure intent, not just trying to be pushy. What would you say to those that do have kind of that fear?
I think the biggest thing is just trial and error. You have to try it in order to understand, okay, what did I do wrong and how could I make that better or approach that better so that my fear isn't as big on the next one, because your fear grows if you're not changing. So I feel like if you try something and you don't change anything and you just continue to do it the same way and you continue to fail, well, you're not trying to progress. You're not trying to figure out how do I actually be successful. So for me, if I fail, I'm like, okay, that didn't work. What can I change about that? Like if it was a phone call and a voicemail I left, okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. Maybe I should try an email next time. Hey, that email was too wordy. Maybe I shorten it a little bit. Maybe I make a personal connection before I try and contact that person. So you're constantly just trying to figure out what that perfect equation is to get that acceptance from another person that you're just, or a client that you're just trying to approach. But the fear is always going to be there. But if you change small things and trying to make progression, then the fear starts to fade away because you realize that, like, oh, I'm learning and now I'm starting to have a little bit of success, and the fear isn't as great anymore because success will help kind of offset that. So for me, it's a big part of that process.
Yeah, it's a continually, like you said, trial and error, and just the persistence, right? The
Absolutely.
persistence to continually get better, and something that was the theme of what you were chatting about is giving value, and value for people's time. And I'm curious how you look at that, especially leading a company that was successful, and now taking on these meetings, and how you train your staff, and or you're going to build your team in. Now we have to give value first. Yes, to sell something. I think we understand that, but really to build a relationship. What's your approach in giving value and giving more than you take? How do you look at that? You talk about overcoming fear, trial and error, but now I got to give some value. What is your mindset when you're trying to build a relationship in building value?
I look at what their biggest issues are, right? And I'm building value not within the product or the company, but within myself as the sales individual. But the biggest thing for me is, like, the last 6 years that I was with the previous company, being able to understand what the issues are that my client goes through or what they need and what they're looking for, that helped tremendously. So now, okay, I understand what the majority issues are that they run into. So now that I'm with this new company, I'm able to build a lot of things from the ground up. I'm able to structure it in a way that now tackle their problems, and so that I can find solutions for them, but I'm building it kind of a la carte, and I'm doing it in a way that I understand the industry, I understand the problems and the solutions they need. So to be able to build that infrastructure and then offer that value to them, I know it's a tremendous value to that customer. So when I pick up the phone and I call a retailer and they're saying, "Hey, my biggest issue right now is driving business." Well, the company that I started with was a marketing firm prior to them being a manufacturer. So what they do well is they actually market and they know how to advertise this product, and that's why you see it all over the internet. And it's not just us spending millions of dollars, but it's doing it in the right ways, actually getting follow through and building up the right clientele. So that you have to find the problems or the solutions that they're looking for, and I think that's the biggest part of it all. So that's what I want to translate to the team that I'm building is, hey, look, we're not just selling product here. We're not just selling fitness equipment. We have to have solutions that come with the fitness equipment and also the support. The other side of things is I know a lot of retailers don't get support from some manufacturers the way they would like to. If they have a service issue and they need to call in, they want to talk to someone to get that service issue dealt with immediately. And so that's another thing that I'm building on with my team right now is building on the service side, making sure that we're there to support the product, not just sell the product. So all those solutions really build into building that new clientele, and all of this also help with the fear. You don't have fear when you're selling a good product, but you're also building the value within yourself and all the structure within it. So it helps a lot when you can build that out before you approach the customer.
Yeah, and having all of that right at your arsenal, being able to have the approach to continually try to overcome the fear, to build value. You know, we are both involved. Other than doing this podcast, I'm a agency owner as well, highly saturated, dime a dozen, fitness equipment. There's a bunch of us, bunch of them, right? World brands and up and comers and knockoffs from overseas. And you talked about differentiation, from building value and really solving problems. How else are you looking at creating that differentiation in a saturated vertical that really, you're going up against some heavy hitters and it's crowded. So, what is your approach to stand out?
So that's a big one, right? I mean, when I was transitioning from the last company to this company, I was trying to figure out, honestly, if I was going to stay within the industry, just because I was wondering, are we now going to be seeing kind of the downfall of the pandemic? For us, if you sold fitness equipment during COVID, you had some of the best sales of your life. I mean,
Yes.
it was unreal, right? But to the point where it was almost miserable because you sold through all the product within 6 months, and then you were just dealing with complaints for about 2 years. So it wasn't a healthy process, even though it was lucrative. So at that point, I felt a little burnt out, and I wasn't sure where the industry was going on the or the fitness production side. But then I had this opportunity arise, and I said, you know what, this is an opportunity to start from the ground up, in a sense, on the physical retail side, and I'm able to build out that structure in what we were missing prior to this. And so be able to do that with a similar product as well. I mean, it's a strength piece for the home, but it's an all-in-one piece. It's a piece that can serve all different types of customers or users. So for me, it had all the key components that I needed to be able to build up a successful sales channel, or to build up to help raise and build the success of the company. So for me, it was having the products and having all the key features. And the other thing was having the control to be able to build out the things that I need, that I knew was going to help be successful. So having those components, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to jump in with this team. But it helps to know that you can do those things even though we're going up bigger competitors. If you have the freedom to make the changes and create the solutions that your industry is looking for, well, you might have the upper hand from a big corporation that has a lot of layers to get through. And that's always been kind of the thing with the specialty retail is the bigger you get, it's not necessarily the better the product gets.
Yeah.
It's more convoluted it gets, and it's hard to get through the layers. So a lot of times the specialty retail, at least in the US, they like to deal with smaller manufacturers because they don't have to go through so many people to either see change or to get a resolution or to get help on something. So being small makes you nimble, and it means that you can answer a lot more questions maybe than the bigger guy can in a shorter period of time. So for me, that's my strength, and with this new company and going up against some of these bigger brands, the other side of it was my network. Had a few key players come on early on, and that helped tremendously. And now we're kind of steamrolling in a direction that I didn't expect to be moving so quickly. So it's good. We got some big players on board, and that helps when you can do that right off the bat.
And you spoke about being nimble. How do you not lose that? How do you not lose and you're facing that? You
Yeah.
got a couple of big players, and there's momentum. How do you ensure that that spirit of nimbleness, almost kind of us against the world kind of attitude, is there? Because and I'm sure we could probably share some stories of individuals of brands that kind of forgot about that attention to detail, and it did get convoluted. So, what is your suggestions, or if you can share kind of your approach of being nimble, not forgetting where you came from, and still being able to differentiate from the quote unquote big companies?
Yeah. Well, I got to live that experience with the last company, right? I mean, we started pretty small, and then we grew on to be big enough to get bought out by an investment firm. And once that happened, everything kind of changed. And things were kind of already changing within that transition. But I learned a lot from it. And I would like to not make those same mistakes with this new company. And so it's a difficult task, and we've all seen it in some shape or form with every company, that's even if we're not a part of it. But the hardest thing is to stay true to what you started on. And for me, the greatest part about this company is they already had success online, be it just through e-commerce. They had a lot of success, but they wanted to go back to working within physical retailers and getting support in specialty territories and getting people like hands on within physical stores. And so I thought that spoke a lot to me and liked that they were heading that direction. But for me, I think it's creating sections or portions of your team. So we have, retail sales, specialty retail. Well, we should always dedicate a certain some amount of support. We should always dedicate a certain amount of money. We should always have these resources dedicated to this section of the company. Because what happened in the past company is we always had all of our resources dedicated to this one section of the company. But then we had a bigger customer come in, and then we dedicated a lot of our resources to that customer and kind of forgot about this other section of the company, this other part of the company. So my biggest thing is as we grow, I want to make sure that we're allocating enough resources for every portion of the company and we're not taking from one and giving to the other. I think that's the most important thing because the moment you start doing that, your customers on that side that are getting kind of shafted in a sense, they're going to sense that you're pulling away from them. They're not getting the same support. They're not getting the same resources. So if you can fully support them and then continue to grow that support, build out another section of that company that doesn't take from the other, then you're going to be successful because it's the people that you built the company with and those customers you built the company with are what your strength is, and that's the foundation. So in my sense is don't ruin the foundation in order to move up the chain to grow a little bit bigger.
And I think there's a part, especially with success, e-commerce success, and now trying to have some physical success within different retailers. How are you approaching that from that e-commerce success to getting into different retailers? What is your marketing approach with that, and trying to bring value to different entrepreneurs in different verticals? How are you looking at that and the audience that you have online, the data that you have online, and obviously only what you can share, but to take that and parlay it into successful campaign to have success in different retailers. What can you share in terms of that strategy where you're coupling that information to this agenda?
I think a lot of different brands and products, like they have their customer base, their primary customer base that they're pitching to, right? They're trying to sell to. And I feel like a lot within our industry, they've always focused on that home customer, and I'm talking about residential customers that are building gyms in their home. So that's always been like the primary focus, and then you have the commercial customer, whether it be big box gyms or light commercial, or you're talking about police and fire and HOA, whatever commercial department you're talking about. But if you're talking about just residential, I think there was a big boat that we missed with my previous company was that there is a whole community of people that enjoy building out their home gyms, especially during COVID, right? Like they're posting about it, they're showing pictures about it, they're chatting with friends about it, and they're finding pride in building this oasis within their home. For them,
It
it's
almost became like
their paradise.
showing off your grill,
Yeah, exactly.
showing
It
off your
really
home
did,
gym.
right? Yeah, like I look at it the same way as like sneaker culture or hack culture or like
Yeah.
things like that where people find pride in it. It's it may not even be about just working out anymore. It's like, hey, how good can I get my gym looking? And how many stations can I have, or what kind of different dynamic can I spin on this? So I think that community we missed the boat on because we were just trying to hit the masses. And when I came on with Force USA, they were already targeting and already had a following from the gym, or I should say, the garage gym community, right? And like those guys we would label as like the meatheads, but they aren't. There's a lot of people with garage gyms now. It's not just a particular style of fitness anymore. So I think that was the biggest boat missed, and that's where I'm targeting now. Like I mentioned before, I know within a retail store what they're missing or where the gaps are. And so for me, when I saw this product, it's an all-in-one. It has a squat rack, a Smith, and a functional aspect of it. I was like, there's very few gyms in our industry that are in physical retail that mark those boxes. And so I already had an opening by just having that one gym that could do all those things. And so for me, I went to my network and I said, hey, look, there's a gap on your floor. I know you don't have this product. I can get it to you at a good price. The margins are good. Let's try it out. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, it's fine. We can move down the road on it. But for me, as I saw the gap, I saw the opening, and I knew how I could fill that with either the selling features I had on the gym, but also the community that they are also not targeting. For them, I spoke to them. I said, "Look, you're not targeting the gym community or the garage gym community. We're always targeting that home consumer that just started a family, that just bought a home. We always thought like this was our perfect customer. but the customer has changed over the last couple of years. So why not widen that net in a sense, and be able to target some other audiences that we weren't before? Because free weight for us, like, everyone wanted stacked gyms. We don't want free weights. It's too much of a mess. We just want something simple where you can pull a pin. Well, that's great, but what about the customer that wants both? Because a lot of times when a customer comes into a retail store and they buy a functional trainer, they already have weights at home. They started off with a barbell and free weights and maybe a small little squat rack. Like, everybody started off with something. Maybe it's a pair of dumbbells. Somebody started off with free weights at the beginning, and now they're moving into an actual home machine. So the way I saw it was, why not an all-in-one where they get the functional aspect of it, but maybe they already have weights that they want to use with this gym that allows them to kind of complement what they already have at home. So there's a lot of features that carried on that allowed me to find those holes within the retail portion of the company, and so it's allowed me to get into those doors because of that.
And how do you keep those doors open? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, for me, like chatting with a lot of people, a root of my conversations tend to be about relationships, and there tends to be this theme because we really want solid relationships in life and people you can count on, and people that aren't just trying to position to get paid or take stuff from you. And a lot of times it's just discussed up until that relationship is created. How do you look at maintaining of that relationship? What kind of focus do you put as an organization, just as yourself, but also as a leader of a team and building a team of that continuation of not letting that relationship that you built drop off? What are some things that you think about in that regard?
And the biggest thing is support. Like, always continuing down that road of support. Like, if a customer doesn't feel supported, then they're going to feel like that relationship, isn't as strong as it was prior. Because at the beginning, it's really easy. At the beginning of a relationship, everything feels great, and you feel like you're being supported. You're getting this awesome new product. You're creating this new relationship. The fireworks are always going, but it's tough to keep that flame, as robust as it once was. So for me, it's continuing that support. I mean, it's the same as our personal relationships as they are with work relationships. I feel they're very similar in that sense. So for me, it's continuing to make them feel supported. Maybe it goes as little as like, hey, we're going to be running a program for Black Friday, and we want to do a promo, but we want to work together with you. What are your thoughts on this? Taking feedback from the customer and asking what they would like to see, rather than us just coming out with something and saying, hey, here's our new product, or here's the new promo that we're going to run. We try and take feedback from them so that they feel supported and they feel like their input is being listened to. So I think those are the biggest things. If you can support that customer and continue to find ways to support them and keep them included within the growing process of the company, then that relationship is going to stay strong throughout.
And for yourself, you've been at this role now almost a year,
Yep.
right? Yeah, almost a year.
Yep.
Kind of what's on the horizon. How are you doing with it? Are you going to join a men's league and try to throw 92? I'm just kidding. But in this role, how's it going? Because I think there's value in, you took this on. There's a big responsibility. And I'm just curious, like mentally, where are you at with it? How are you dealing with some of the ups and downs and the challenges of leading the charge, so to speak? So how's it going so far?
So I mean, I feel like anybody, in my position or field, I should say, is is personally motivated, right? Like, they are motivated to continue to push, and if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you want to continue to push yourself. You want to be successful, and you want to win. I mean, there's a lot of situations where it's the athlete that comes out inside of me. Beginning of the first few months of this, things are moving pretty slow, but I had to get into the mindset of not getting ahead of myself and realizing what my goal was, but how was I going to attain that goal by building out the infrastructure first. So I told myself whatever I was doing, because I am getting to kind of start something from the ground up, I had to make sure to build the infrastructure so that it could withhold anything that I build past that. And so every time I wanted to pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this new product, I want to sell you something, I kind of put the phone down and said, okay, well, what do I need to support that customer? And I would start to write down my notes and start building out what that infrastructure looks like. I'm like, okay, well, we need a service team, and the service team needs to be able to answer these questions and be able to do this type of support. Okay, cool. Well, I need to have price sheets for everything. I need to have sell sheets for everything. I need to make sure that there's resources that the customer can now dip into, but right when I bring them on board. I don't want to say, hey, you're on board, but let me build this stuff out for you.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't look professional. It doesn't build the right message at the beginning. So there was a lot of things and steps that I had to kind of like hold myself back from and just stay, I guess, focused and build out that infrastructure. And then once that was built out, we're talking about, 4 or 5 months down the road, then I could pick up the phone and really just start hammering away and saying, hey, I have this product, I have this support system, let's go. And so that helped me tremendously, just staying organized and trying to stay within myself. But then every time I would have, someone not return my call, or I felt like I had a strong relationship with someone and they ended up turning me down, I just wouldn't let that kind of weigh on my shoulders too much. Cause I'm like, you know what? I understand what it's like to be in that position. I understand when you have a relationship of products that you're already selling, you don't necessarily want to bring in a new product and then ruin a relationship you have with another one or whatever it is. So whatever the situation was, I just didn't let it get to me. But then I would circle back with those customers now. It was 4 months ago. Now it's 6 months prior after that. And I call them back, and then now they're taking the product on. So you never close the door, you never burn the bridge. But for me, it was that competitive nature to keep pushing forward, but also the experience for me to learn to build that foundation first before you try to, kind of push your head through a wall and force
Yeah.
into these guys onto a product that isn't ready to support it.
Now, did you have any superstitions as a ball player?
Oh yeah, yeah. One of my big ones in college were I would draw the initials of my best friend passed away when I was 18 in the dirt right behind the mound. So that was always one of the big ones. And then the other one was like writing certain messages within side of my baseball cap, just to keep me focused or to remember. Like one of my favorite ones was this pitch, this moment. And so it's just reminding myself to stay in this moment, to not think about all the other things that, come to clutter your mind, but remember you're in this moment. So just focus on this pitch, this moment. And that's carried me through a lot of conversations and a lot of things, now in my professional career. But yeah, I mean, I think every athlete has something they do in superstition. I would clean my shoes before every day, every game I would pitch, and
Just good
there's small
practice.
little things.
Looks good.
Exactly. Good, exactly. Good practice. It's same thing of like making your bed, every time you get up in the morning. I make my bed every morning. It's just small things that kind of tip you towards success.
And what would you say to someone that is an assistant manager that wants to aspire to be the manager or a national sales manager or an entrepreneur, taking along that same lines of these things that you did that brought comfort or was routine for you? What are some things you'd say to these up and comers or current veterans about, hey, these are some habits that I saw, make your bed. I should probably do that more often. But what other habits would you say you should engage in? Because this will get you on the right path from your experience.
I mean, the other thing is like self-education, right? I mean, for me, before I got my first rep job, the reason they hired me on is because I came over prepared for the interview. The good thing is in the early, or I should say in the later stages of getting into this career path, there's YouTube. YouTube is a massive tool for all of us. We all utilize it now, but even back then it was a big tool for me. When I was working in a storefront, I was constantly watching YouTube videos and trying to figure out how to either find a new feature or find a new way to sell a product and figure out a way how to engage that customer. And so there was always ways that I was trying to get the edge or try to educate myself that I can get better at my craft. And so when I had the opportunity to go in for an interview for Inspire Fitness, the first thing I did was watch every single YouTube video that they had put out, read up on all the content they had on their website, anything they could find in the history of the company. I mean, I went in to the point where I printed out probably 5 or 6 pages of what my sales demo would be, step by step, how I would go through each product and what I would say. And, sure enough, when I went to go do the interview, they asked me, okay, do a demo, show me how you would approach this product. And but when I regurgitated everything that I had, they're like, man, you literally took a piece of every part of our company, every part of our sales reps, and you molded it to your own. Like that's impressive. So I would say that going over prepared for every position, but continuing to self educate yourself. If you're looking to get to that next step of your career, if you're an assistant and you want to get to the head of that department, you have to educate yourself. How is that person above you, getting to where they are? What are the things that they're doing that are making them successful in there? Or what are the things that they're not doing? Like, what would you do different? That was the biggest thing for me is like when I got into be a sales rep, I'm like, I remember when I was in the storefront, and the guys that the sales reps that I didn't necessarily like, or that I didn't get a lot of, I didn't get a lot of education from, and I wanted to see certain things. So I took the things that they were missing, the things that they did well, and I tried to do that as a sales rep and just be a little bit better. So I would say those are the key things for sure.
And for yourself, it's not always easy to project out, but the road that you've been on, leading this company and kind of a new venture, where are you kind of seeing all the work that you put in and the team that you're building? Where are you going to see Force USA, but yourself in a year? Kind of what's the hope in about a year?
So for me, just being nationwide with the company as a company goal. And currently, we just made a few partnerships that are going to get us there by the end of the year. So, that was one of my biggest goals was to, okay, the eastern half of the U.S., but how do you get, countrywide? So we're one step in the right direction right now, and with a lot of hard work, we're going to be able to get there by the end of the year. So nationwide was one of the biggest goals. We're dipping into Canada as well now too, so building up that network. But me personally, I mean, for me, it's how much can I grow within the role that I'm in now, and then how can I show support and build a network with underneath myself. So when I build on my sales staff, what are the best ways to bring them on and then help them be successful? Like I just want to continue growing as a person in my professional career and to be able to be a mentor to every person that comes before me, because I felt like there was, like we talked about mentors, I didn't necessarily have a personal mentor, but I had tons of people that I learned from, and I just want to be one of those people that the person below me learns from. And as long as I can do that in a positive way, then to me that's being successful and to continue to learn as I push through this career.
And to kind of finish, but tap into your superstition. What would Nolan write in his cap now?
Hmm, that's a good question. Uh, um, I think for me it would be, don't forget the path that got you here. That's the biggest thing. Because as the years go by, I feel like we forget a lot. There's some things that drove us. There's some things that we learned from. Um, the biggest thing is just to be humbled by how far you've come. Never forget being, always stay hungry, always continue trying to grow, but don't forget the path that got you here. For me, that's the biggest thing, and that's probably been the central focus within the last couple of years for me. And it's helped me stay grounded, stay humble, but continue to be driven and know that there's more success to be had.